Guys, Bitcoin's major support zone is 38.5k. Its major resistance zone is 48k. We're in between in the middle there around 42. We know that we're in a macro range here, and as we've seen a correction down from 44k to 40k, the new question arises. Has Bitcoin seen enough of a pullback? Has Bitcoin seen enough of a correction to reset the move and give us enough momentum to move upwards more? Or will Bitcoin have to go down more first? That is the big question. Up or down? And we will answer that in this video today. Stay tuned. I think the best way to introduce this video's topic is to look into the macro analysis of the macro levels, and then we can start diving into the questions we're asking and the questions we're answering in this video. How do we understand the macro levels on Bitcoin? Well, we use various methods. One of them is the volume profile. The volume profile is actually a very good method. And using the volume profile, we can identify our support and resistance range. So we have support stemming from around 37 or 38k to 38.5k. All right, that is our support range here, this green box. I'll make it bright green so you can see it, and I'll actually exemplify it there. That is basically our support box. Perhaps it stems a little lower, perhaps it goes to something like 37.5k, but that's our support. And then our resistance, if you look at the volume profile, starts at around 47-ish, let's say 47.5k, and it goes up to around a clean number of 48k. That is our resistance zone. And so we have these two levels, red and green, and we can remove the volume profile now, and we can zoom into them. And we can see that, obviously Bitcoin always has a macro range, always has a macro support, always has a macro resistance. Now, right now, as we've just kind of shown you that the macro support and macro resistance is 38k roughly, 38.5k to around 47.5k to 48k roughly. That's our macro range right now. That's where we're ranging, we're bouncing between. Previously, our macro range was stemming from something like 32k, right, to 38k. And then before that, it was stemming from something like 24.5k to 32k, right? We were bouncing between this zone over here. We finally broke to the upside, headed into the next zone. We didn't actually see much bouncing, but we found resistance. We broke above, and now we're in this new range here. So we can delete the two new boxes we just drew in. The fundamental thing we are arguing, the fundamental thing we're discussing today is where will Bitcoin go next, right? Because it has to go either to this red box for resistance or this green box for support. Regardless of whether it breaks out above the red box, regardless of whether it breaks down below the green box, the fact of the matter is it has to be touching one of those macro zones next, and those macro zones are going to offer major resistance and support depending on which one we test. So where are we going next, right? Bitcoin's at a crossroad, okay? It's at a path from which, does it go up to the macro resistance or does it go down to the macro support? That's the question. Now, what I can say is this. It is highly likely, and these are just preliminary scenarios I'll give you, and I will answer this question in a second, but it is highly likely that if we go up to this macro resistance, we will reject from that and correct from it briefly, okay? It is highly likely if we go back down to this macro support, we will bounce off of it, right? That's how macro support and resistance works. Resistance, you're likely to reject. Support, you're likely to bounce. So knowing that, which one are we going to be going to first? Okay, so let's answer this question, and we'll start by giving context to what people think. So if we're looking at my Wolves of Crypto community, for example, we have a poll we did 10 days ago. Will Bitcoin reach 48k before the end of 2023? 59% of people said yes. And then I did it a day ago again. So there's a 9-day gap between these polls, and now only 47% of people say yes. But 47% of people is still 50-50. It still is quite a significant number of people suspecting that Bitcoin will go upwards to this red box before the end of the year. And let me just say, the end of the year is not far away. It's only 16 days away. Seeing a gain of like 12% in 16 days, it might sound like not much, but it's actually quite a big gain to see. 12% is a significant move on Bitcoin, especially considering that we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 consecutive green weekly candles. To suggest that we'll go 12% higher without correction, basically, because we'd have to not correct, right, in order to see that happen by the end of the year, essentially, is quite a big claim. And this is where we get into the fundamental problem, in my opinion, with the bullish argument. The bullish argument makes sense in a lot of ways, but the one reason it doesn't make sense too much to me is because we've already exhausted Bitcoin's move, right? We've seen, as I said, 8 green weekly candles consecutively. I actually don't think we've seen that many green weekly candles perhaps since 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, perhaps since back here in 2020. That's probably the last time we saw 8 consecutive green weekly candles. So look, the fact of the matter is Bitcoin's exhausted for all intents and purposes, and you can look at that from many perspectives. You can look at volume, you can look at RSI divergence, you can look at many things and say that Bitcoin's exhausted, and that could be an argument as to why Bitcoin will reject and go down to the green box first. You can also look at things like the monthly chart. Okay, and before we look at the monthly chart, this chart here shows you basically what Bitcoin has done cycle to cycle from all-time high to a break at that all-time high. And you can see actually that Bitcoin in this cycle is deviating quite a bit higher than where we were in the previous 2 cycles. This deviation is essentially suggesting that Bitcoin is overbought at the moment. It needs to come down or at least go sideways until it catches up to where the previous cycles were so that it can stay on track of the cyclical theory. What would you say? The over-exaggeration to the upside we've seen in the price is not unprecedented, right? We saw it in the last cycle, for example, in 2017, 2019, I should say. We moved upwards quite a bit higher than where we were in the previous cycle. So it's not like this is groundbreaking, it's going to break everything and the whole cyclical structure is in danger. No, not at all. It just means that Bitcoin is perhaps just a little bit overvalued here. It needs to come down a little bit or at least go sideways for, say, 2 or 3 months. Right, that's essentially what it's suggesting. If you're combining that with the fact that we've got this monthly chart Ichimoku cloud baseline here in red, suggesting, right, that Bitcoin is at very, very strong resistance. Because if you look at this line historically, I'm not going to waste your time by going over every single data point, but if you look at the line historically, this red line, you can clearly see that whenever Bitcoin is below it, we're in a bear market. And whenever we're above it, we're in a bull market, right? It's not rocket science to see that. It's not rocket science to see that this line is incredibly important in suggesting where the macro trajectory of Bitcoin is and where cyclically Bitcoin is positioned. And so right now, as we bump our head into the resistance zone offered by this baseline in the Ichimoku cloud, we can draw similarities to what we saw in 2019. In 2019, we very clearly saw a wick above this Ichimoku cloud baseline, but ultimately actually rejected from that Ichimoku cloud baseline and went downwards for months after that before breaking above it again after the halving. Now, look, not only are we in the same part of the cycle as we were in 2019, we're also in a very similar period of time to the chart we just deleted, right? Let's bring it back up. Let's see if I can bring it back up here. Actually, I'll have to get it 1 second. So as you can see, as I pointed out just then, we were overexposed, over-exaggerated to the upside, I should say, in 2019. And we're doing the exact same thing now. And that same period of time where we over-exaggerated the price to the upside is the period of time we rejected from this baseline, which we're testing right now. So not only is it the same part in the cycle, it's also the same kind of structure we had in the previous cycle in terms of going too high. And so it does stand to reason that there's a very serious, very possible scenario that Bitcoin, regardless of what it does in the wick, regardless of what it does in the next 16 days, closes below 42K and goes downwards for a few months based on the rejection from this Ichimoku cloud baseline, just like what we saw in 2019. That's a very real possibility. And if you're combining that with the fact that we've seen very clear, definitive trend exhaustion, in the fact that we've had so many consecutive weekly candles green, and in the fact that we've seen an 80% move without any significant correction, the fact of the matter is Bitcoin's in danger here, and the fact of the matter is the bear case being we go down and retest 38.5K is likely, right? So if we're looking at daily candle, daily chart, and by the way, I will address the bearish argument because it actually is valid as well. I don't want to sit here and say that I'm decisively bearish right now because I'm actually not. The fact of the matter is I think there's actually a bit of doubt to be had, and I want to outline that doubt and outline a possibility that it will go to the upside. Some of that's in relation to ETF and some of that's in relation to the charts I'm about to bring up in a second. So let's be very clear. I'm not sitting here saying I'm 100% certain Bitcoin's going to correct further because I'm not. But what I will say is this. Bitcoin has found support here. Okay, so this is going into some perhaps support for the bearish case. We've found support. We saw a double top formation at 44.6K, an unexpected level to say the least, but we certainly did reject from it quite swiftly. And if we're looking at my predictions during that correction, we actually filmed a video that I'll bring up right here. I'll show you the video it was. It was the video right here, Brutal Crash, that I uploaded 3 days ago. And during that video, Bitcoin was up at 43.7K, and it was during that video that I predicted Bitcoin would drop down to 40K for a retest. We did exactly that. So that was the correct prediction, and that was a period of time in which we could be decisive in the price action because we had a double top formation. I can't say we can be as decisive right now, even though I've made it seem like that in the first part of my video. I will say that Bitcoin actually does have quite a bit of support here. It has support in the ascending support line. It has support in the RSI triangle formation. Yes, it has bearish divergence. Yes, it has weakness shown on the volume with descending volume in the upwards trend. Look, I'm not denying there is weakness. I'm not denying there's exhaustion. But unfortunately, for people who like clarity in their predictions, Unfortunately, exhaustion doesn't represent an immediate stop to the upwards trend. Exhaustion represents a likelihood, an increasing likelihood that the upwards trend will stop. It's not a certain, it's not a guarantee, it's not a book closed kind of answer. So the exhaustion isn't an answer in itself as to whether Bitcoin will stop going upwards. There very much is a possibility on the table that Bitcoin could bounce further, reach 48k, and then go downwards from there. I will stand by my prediction very clearly that when we reach 48k, we will see a significant correction. I do believe that. I do also believe that is more likely than not that Bitcoin goes to 38.5k, or at least around that region, maybe 39, before we go upwards further and break new highs. I think that's the more likely scenario, more backed scenario based on TA. But I'm not going to sit here and deny the possibility that we could go upwards here. You know, we're still on support. That's a guarantee. We're still on support. We haven't broken that support yet. Ascending support line. We've still got an RSI triangle formation that we haven't broken into downside yet. Once we start breaking below these things, that's when we can be a bit more confident. Right now, we haven't done that. Right now, we're still in the middle of patterns. And I want to be very clear. If we're looking at things like Ethereum, which might not seem relevant to Bitcoin, but I assure you it actually is, Ethereum has a very important red line here. Okay, a red line that you can see is kind of the dividing line between the bear market and the bull market. And as of right now, we've actually bounced off that for support during the Bitcoin correction. That's been flipped for support. Now, if we're using traditional methods of TA, we could say that will hold for support and Ethereum will keep going upwards to the upside. So that's not really reassuring to the Bitcoin bear case. We've also got a triangle here on Ethereum, but the fact of the matter is, regardless of the support we currently have, regardless of the structures that haven't broken down yet, that will probably break down, the fact of the matter is, yes, Bitcoin, could go upwards and break its local high and go even further towards 48k before correcting. But is that the more supported claim? No, the fact of the matter is it's not. Right? The fact of the matter is, the more supported claim is that Bitcoin will break down and go towards a minimum of something like 39k, right? That's the more supported claim. That is the more likely claim, even with all this, potentially this and potentially that. That's the more supported claim. But in saying that, I'm not denying at all the fact that there is an argument to be made that Bitcoin could go higher, because in accepting that we are in the middle of a macro range between a macro support and a macro resistance, I'm accepting that there's no clear-cut major resistance and support other than these two levels. And so we only have one of two options, right? Do we go up or do we go down? And in saying we're likely to go down, I'm not completely ignoring the possibility that we could just go upwards, right? Considering we broke this level to the upside, we're still heading to the upside, we're still in a macro trend to the upside. So it's not ridiculous to assume that before we see a significant correction, we'd have to reach a significant correction zone, which would be a macro resistance. That's not a ridiculous claim. I just see at this point, the more likely claim is we kind of exhausted this move and we go down from here. But that is subject to change. Look, if I turn on this camera tomorrow and we're above 44.6k, we've broken the recent local high, and we're above this yellow line on the RSI, I will very quickly change my position to, okay guys, the next target is 48k. Everything is subject to change. All we can do is predict or observe the likely scenario. Look, I will say this, even though I'm leaning more bearish on Bitcoin right now in the short term, I still do not think we should be taking short positions from this range, because I understand that my argument is essentially predicated on the fact that Bitcoin is exhausted. I understand, though, that Bitcoin has been exhausted for a long period of time. Bitcoin has been exhausted since like 35k, and we've still managed to go to 44. So I don't think the Bitcoin's exhausted argument is particularly strong on an immediate term basis. It's more of a medium term argument. And so in understanding that, I do recognize that this possibility of Bitcoin could go higher, and I don't think that taking shorts as of right now, without a breakdown from the yellow line, without a breakdown from the triangle on Bitcoin, without a breakdown from the Ethereum macro level, is a logical thing to do. I think you need to wait for more confirmation for that to occur. Perhaps we'll have that confirmation by tomorrow, and perhaps tomorrow we'll be able to give you a more specified prediction. But all I can really do today is analyze the two scenarios. Do we go up to 48k, or do we go down to 38.5? And give you what I deem to be the more likely scenario, which is we go down to 38.5. But I want to clarify that even with that said, I'm not jumping into 100x shorts right now. I'm simply not. I will wait for confirmation of that position. Again, hopefully we'll have that by tomorrow, and hopefully by tomorrow we can give you more concrete claims that are actually confirmed. It is important that everyone remembers in this market, you do not make money by predicting, you make money by reacting. There have been so many times in this market where I have predicted one thing, okay, and my prediction has been incorrect, but I've still made a bunch of money because even though I said it was going to go up, it actually went down, but I still reacted accordingly. It's the reaction, it's the clicking the button, there's the sell, the short, the buy, that makes you the money, right? Saying words about what might happen doesn't make you any money. Having two scenarios, what are we going to do if it goes up? What are we going to do if it goes down? Is what makes you the money, not predicting things. It's very important people understand that, because I think people in the crypto space, when you have this, every day I watch crypto YouTube, every day I watch crypto Twitter, you get into the idea, the space of thinking in which you think that predictions are everything. Predictions mean absolutely zero, nothing. They're words, they mean nothing. I could make videos all week about what we're going to do if we go up, what we're going to do if we go down, and that would have infinitely more meaning than me saying what will happen next. Because we shouldn't be reacting in the middle of a range. We should be reacting when the range is broken. And I'll leave you with that, guys. I think I've made my opinions pretty clear in this video. Ultimately, I am leaning short-term bearish. I'm not denying the possibility of upside, so I'm not strongly short-term bearish. I just think it's more likely. And I've very much outlined where the ranges are on both the long-term scale being 48k and 38.5k, and also the short-term scale being the local high of 44.6 and this yellow line here, which is currently sitting around 40k. So I've got my scenarios painted out quite clearly, and we'll have to wait for a break of one of those scenarios, hopefully by tomorrow, so we can adjust accordingly or react accordingly. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next video. Before we end it, check out the Bitget and Bingx exchange. If you want a new exchange, these are the ones you can look at. They're both extremely low in trading fees. Bingx is accessible globally, and Bitget is accessible globally minus the USA and Canada. So check out either one of these exchanges if you want a good exchange. My referral links are down below for discounts on fees and rewards. The Crypto Academy, if you want to learn how to trade, the Become a Trader 10-unit course will teach you everything you need to know. Market patterns, candlestick formations, market psychology, everything is on there, including the email address, which is on the website. You can find that in the description. And finally, if you want to trade altcoins with us on the VIP group, I post altcoin trading signals about 4 times a week with entry targets, stop losses, everything you need to trade an altcoin. We've been extremely profitable in the past with an 80% win rate, and our PDF of all trading results is there, ready to go and ready for you to view. So check that all out. Guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll catch you tomorrow.